Hello readers and writers, welcome back to the channel. Today we will be talking about how to write interesting characters. I once had a screenwriting teacher ask, what is the foundation of a story? Why do people sit down and watch your show? And what is the reason for them coming back episode after episode? Some people said world, some people said action, some people said plot, but the answer was character. The foundation of a story is character. You can have the greatest worlds ever imagined or created. You can have the craziest fight scenes, car chases, or big action set pieces. But if you do not have a character within your story that the audience is attached to, no one will care. Think back to your favorite movie, book, game, comic, show, and try and remember why you loved it. Yes, I bet there are some action sequences or plot points that stuck with you, but why did you care about them in the first place? Avengers Endgame had one of the biggest action sequences I've ever seen. But if it had just been a bunch of random aliens running around fighting in a ruined area, I don't think I would have cared. It really wouldn't have meant anything. But because it involved all the characters I loved, knew, and grew with, it meant everything. We care about the fight, we care about the action because of the characters within it. We care what happens to them because we're emotionally invested. If we're not emotionally invested in the character, we really couldn't care less. And that is why character brings your audience back to your story time and time again. Unfortunately, if you don't have strong characters, you don't have a strong story. And all of that brings me to my main point of this video. Why do we care about your character? If you're wondering how to actually write interesting characters, start with why do we care about them? And if they're your main character, then we really need to care about them. If we're spending the most amount of time with this person, then we need to be enjoying it and we need to be invested. Your audience needs to care what they do or what happens to them. Now, how do we make someone care about our characters? There are 5 points I'm going to focus on, and I think they will help. Point of view, history, voice, active versus passive, and conflict. First, your character needs to have a specific point of view on the world. You have to be telling your story from a point of view. There is absolutely no way around it. If you do not, your character will feel incredibly flat. Think about it this way. If your character doesn't have a specific point of view, then they won't have any opinions about anything. And this is especially true with book writing because you won't have any thoughts or feelings to share with the reader through internal monologue. And how will they converse with anyone? Even with their own dialogue, they have to be able to share their point of view. They have to be able to share their opinions on stuff. We need to know what they are thinking about, what is happening around them based on their point of view. Even their actions will make no sense because where are these actions coming from? Why is this person thinking all of these things, behaving this way? Where is all of this coming from? And this all ties into my next point, history. History is a very good way of establishing point of view. What type of person have they always been? Are they more standoffish and less accepting of newcomers? Are they mean, bitter, and angry? Are they heroic? Are they anxious? Are they afraid of the world? Now, how did they get like this? All of that cannot be for no reason. Their personality, their actions, their feelings has to be based on something. A lot of people will say, oh, my character's just like that. Oh, that's just what they're thinking. Oh, that's just their personality. Do that. That's perfectly fine. If that's the way you want to go about things, be my guest. I won't say anything. But just don't expect people to think that they're all that interesting without that depth to it. People want to know the why. I like to believe that character has to be based on reason. The way your character acts and their point of view should be based on something in their history. If you have a person who is bitter, envious, and jaded, why are they that way? Is it because they failed at every single thing they've ever tried in their life? Have they been beaten down every single time they tried to stand up? Did they watch someone else be better than them in every single way throughout their entire lives? But if they're just bitter without reason and none of that stuff mattered, then I think it's just gonna fall flat. But when you begin to explain and understand the why of their point of view through their history, then your characters become more interesting and dynamic. I'm a big fan of superheroes, so let's use a hero as an example. If you have a hero who saves people, what is their why? Spider-Man doesn't just save people because he likes to. Peter Parker saves them because he failed to save Uncle Ben, and he doesn't want to let that happen to anyone else. He learned that with great power comes great responsibility. And by not saving people, he is actually letting them die. That responsibility is now on his hands, and that is his why. Let's also use Roland Deschain from the Dark Tower as an example. When we first meet Roland, he is closed off from the world and hesitant to love anything or anyone. Why is Roland like this? Because he has lost everything and everyone he has ever loved. That is his why. He's not closed off for no reason. He has just accepted the fact that loving someone and losing them has brought him pain, and he never wants to go through that again. All he cares about now is the tower, the why, the actions, the thoughts. It all has to come from somewhere that you establish. And we don't need it all at once in giant info dumps. And you don't have to start your story right at the big historical event either. But as your story progresses, we need to understand the why eventually so that we can become more invested in the character and learn to care about them. Next, let's talk about voice. Voice is the specific way that your character stands out. It needs to be unique, it needs to be interesting, and it needs to be different from the rest. The most common voices that we see are humor and intelligence, and I would say those are really good places to start. People love reading smart and funny characters. It's just a fact. We love seeing a smart character get out of a bad situation, and we also love reading and watching things that make us laugh. Now, if you can mix the two, even better. But aside from those, we also see characters with stoic voices, kind, pessimistic, evil, naive, optimistic. We see a wide range of voices, and your job is to figure out who you want your character to be and the best voice for them. Focus on one or two and then sprinkle in the others. We all love a goofball, but we love seeing the goofball serious sometimes. The same way we love to see a stoic character cracking a joke once in a while. Remember, it's not a one voice fits all. And if you choose one kind of voice to start, your character's voice can always morph into another as the story progresses and as they move throughout their arc. We just need a personality. It doesn't matter what it is. We just need something. The only thing you can really do wrong with this is not having a voice at all. Next, we'll talk about active and passive characters. You definitely want your character to be more active than passive. And what I mean by that is we don't want the events of the story to just be happening to the character. We want the main character to be involved. We want the main character to be actively changing or influencing the story in some way. And not every character needs to be doing this to be interesting either. But for your main character, try and make them as active as possible. We want to see how their voices, history, and point of view affects the story and characters around them in a meaningful way. A passive character will just let things go by them without any real action or opinions about anything. Nothing a passive character will do will change the story. I've been reading Harry Potter lately, and Harry Potter as a protagonist has kind of been bugging me because I feel like he is more passive than active. I think it does work for Harry Potter because we are all going into the wizarding world for the first time, and we're all just letting things happen. We're all seeing things for the first time. So I think it works for that. But I would say he is more passive, and I think it'll change as the books go on. Don't use Harry Potter as an example. Even though it is the best-selling book and it has more of a passive character, I think it is the exception but not the rule. Harry has a voice and he has opinions on things, but a lot of stuff in the story is just happening to him. Not a bad thing, but it has to be handled with care. It has to be done in the right way. Essentially, you have to ask yourself, if I took my main character out of the story right now, would anything change? Would the plot change? Would the world change? Would any of the events change? That is how you know if you have an active character or a passive character. Or can I just swap them in for someone else and the rest happens how it happens? You really have to figure out if your character is impacting your story in a meaningful way. Or is my character just in the middle of this decade-long story that I've been coming up with and thinking about and I've been wanting to tell, and this giant world I've been creating? Am I just throwing a random person in the middle of it and then letting all those events play out? Or is that character actively influencing that world that I've created? You don't want your main character to just be a pawn in your story, being thrown around whichever way the winds of the story blow. Finally, conflict. Yes, conflict. Say it with me. We need conflict. conflict. I saved it for last because this might be the most important aspect of all of this. We need conflict with our characters, external and internal. We need conflict from the world and characters around them because that's what pushes the story forward, and we need conflict between their ears. And based on this conflict, we need change. We need to see growth. We need to see learning. We need to see denial. We need to see success. We need to see failure. We need to see all this happening as they are becoming a new character from the one we saw at the start. Focus on the long-term arc. Who do you want your character to be when your story is finally told? How did the story shape and affect them? What did they learn along the way that impacted their growth? People in real life rarely go through massive changes, but we need our main characters to. They have to grow, and at the end, they should look different from who we saw at the beginning. And I'm not saying just gut your characters and make them a completely different person by the end that's completely unrecognizable. No, keep the best qualities of your characters. If anything, amplify them, make them better. But we need some form of growth, positive or negative, both of which are forms of growth. Just because someone's not growing the way we want them to doesn't mean they're not growing at all. Now, this is also based on what story you are trying to tell. If a character grows and wakes up to their need by the end, they elevate to hero status. But if they fail to grow and wake up to their need, they descend into tragedy. And you can tell a story in either of these forms. Both are acceptable. And just because your character falls into tragedy doesn't mean they didn't have an arc. It could just mean that they were pre-arced and that was always their fate, or they tried and tried again, but nothing worked and they ultimately fell into tragedy. That is still an arc. Regardless, you have to pick a lane and your character needs to grow or be shaped in some way. Lastly, conflict matters nothing if we are not emotionally invested. If you apply everything I've said so far, your audience should be invested. They will care about what happens to your main character. The conflict will mean something. But if they do not care about your main character, the conflict will fall flat and the illusion of the story will fade. And I'm telling you, we see it time and time again with disaster movies. Entire cities will be leveled, but we don't care because there's no attachment to it. We don't really care what's happening to the people in the buildings because we know it's a story. We know it's not real. We know it's fake. Focus first on creating the attachment. Then, no matter the scale, a small argument between two people or an intergalactic war, the audience will care about what happens. And that is what matters. And that's it for today's video. I hope this helped, and now it's up to you to go out and write interesting characters on your own. And if you want to see me try and apply everything that I've been talking about today in my own writing, then please check out my debut fantasy sci-fi superhero novel, The Jadorian Saga: The Golden Academy. Thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. If you have any thoughts about what we discussed today, please drop them down in the comments below. And of course, if you want to see more writing advice videos like this, please subscribe. Good luck with your own writing endeavors, and as always, happy reading and writing, and I'll see you guys next time.